people look for things that give them cheap dopamine, right? For a simple reason, building a company is very fucking hard. Nobody cares about what you're building. Most of the time, the product's not good. You're not making any money. Your friends at McKinsey are always the ones paying for lunch, right? So it's very frustrating, and it seems like you're going nowhere. And so anytime you can get that cheap hit, you try to go for it, okay? And so you do the things that look like work from the outside, but don't bring you any step forward. So as I mentioned before, we bring Pierre and Emna on stage, and they'll have the opportunity to tell you a bit more about what they're building now. I just wanted to give you a bit of context on why we decided to do this event. And I actually got to decide that we were going to do this event, and I did it for a very simple reason, which is that I probably had the most terrible use of my first 100 days as an entrepreneur that you can ever imagine. And I'll give you a bit more detail later on. And the idea was, instead of saying, hey, this is how I used crappily the first 100 days of my story, put people in front of you who actually remember what the first 100 days were like. Because very often when you listen to, you come to events here at the family or other places where you have tech founders, it's like people who are very established, and actually their first 100 days is sort of a distant, hazy, blurry memory. And it's usually filled with a lot of, very nice storytelling that sounds plausible, but mostly sounds implausible. And so I wanted to have founders who are already much further than most of the people here in the room, but who are still close enough to those early days that they can actually tell you what they look like. And so if you're in the very early days of building your business, you'll know what they wasted time on, and you'll trust them a lot more than you trust me, because I wasted my time like almost 100% on those first 100 days. And so why do those first 100 days matter? They matter, I don't know if you've heard this analogy, but when people look at the sort of track record of presidents, they often look to their first 100 days as the metric on which the pace of their entire presidency was determined. And with startups, I think there's something a bit different, which is that what you actually do in those first 100 days isn't necessarily going to determine where you go, but it is going to determine the intensity and the culture that you're going to build. And that's something that I'm going to be focusing on quite a lot with Pierre and Emna. It isn't so much that you're going to find the secret right within those first 100 days, but you're going to build the processes and build the rituals that will allow you to find the secret. And why does it matter? Because when you're building a company, and especially if you're deciding to build a startup, what you're essentially saying is, I'm going to take huge amounts of energy and I'm going to dedicate them to the next 10 years. Instead of sort of dedicating my career the next 40 years to building something, I'm going to compress time and put all that intensity in the next 10 years. And if that's something that you're really going to try to do, then you need to do it from day one. Or else, all you're going to build, you're not going to attract the right people, you're not going to build the right culture, and that's something that you're going to find that's going to be very penalizing later down the line. And so what is it that you're supposed to do in those first 100 days? In the first 100 days, you should have one focus and one focus only, and that's finding product market fit. I've tried to find, there's huge amounts of definitions online on what product market fit is. I think that it's sort of one of those undefinable words that are very obvious when you see it. There's the saying for love, there's the saying for pornography. Once you see it, you know what it is. Well, it's the same thing for product market fit. I think it's quite hard to define it, but once you see it, you know that it's there. And in order to find product market fit, you can waste huge amounts of time, and if you don't want to waste time, there are only two things you should be doing. One is building your product, and two is speaking to customers. So speaking to customers means two things. It means on one end, selling, and French people, who's here is French in the room? Okay, you come with a sort of culturally inherited disadvantage to most of the rest of the world when it comes to selling. You sell too late, you sell poorly, and you sell too cheap more often than not, because for some weird reason, you think that taking money is something that's a crime, okay? And so putting yourself in the position where you have to sell from day one, especially if it's something crappy, is a great discipline for you to become a better salesperson, okay? But selling isn't the end of speaking to customers. Another very important thing when it comes to customers is doing customer support. So another great French specialty is to hire interns. And one of the first things that first-time founders put interns on is customer support, right? Because it feels like the thing where you're going to have the least added value. But actually, in the early days, customer support is probably the thing where you can have the highest impact. Not because you're necessarily going to get back the customers that are very pissed off at how shitty the experience with you guys was, but because you're going to learn what you need to learn in order to make your product better and to increase your retention. And that's something that's incredibly important. And those lessons, you can't learn indirectly through some random intern who is taking care of communications for 3 or 6 months in your company. Okay, these are lessons that only you can learn. And I think it's a general trend that's very hard for most first-time founders to understand, is that in general, you should start by doing everything and then progressively delegating only those things that you really understand, right? Because when you're hiring people, it's very complicated to know if they're doing a good job if you've never done that job before. If you're a first-time founder, you're right out of school, and we'll have the opportunity to talk about that with Pierre and Emna, because they actually started both of their companies right out of school. They didn't really know any job, right? So they had to learn all of those jobs, and then they had to hire people who'd been doing those jobs for a lot longer than them. And the only way that they were really able to do that is because they'd gone through the jobs themselves. And so before we bring Pierre and Emna, and I can give you a bit more context on what they do, and they'll give you a bit more context on how they got here, I wanted to tell you what the things that you definitely shouldn't be doing in the first 100 days, but that every first-time founder ends up doing, and which is the biggest waste of time, okay? So, in order of importance, and the common thing here is that people look for things that give them cheap dopamine, right? For a simple reason, building a company is very fucking hard. Nobody cares about what you're building. Most of the time, the product's not good. You're not making any money. Your friends at McKinsey are always the ones paying for lunch, right? So it's very frustrating, and it seems like you're going nowhere. And so anytime you can get that cheap hit, you try to go for it. Okay? And so you do the things that look like work from the outside, but don't bring you any step forward. So what are those things? They're looking for an office, because working out of your couch doesn't look very serious. Okay? They're participating in pitch competitions, because if you can't win a customer, might as well win at a shitty panel. They're trying to speak to the press, because nothing makes mom more proud than seeing an article in Le Monde or L'Express, or if you're very unlucky, Madines or Le French Web. What else can I give as an example of wasting time? Chasing after subsidies, right? So that's another typical thing. If you're, probably the biggest problem that we have here in France is that if you're a bad company, you can survive forever. There's this very distressing metric, which is that France is one of the developed countries with the smallest death rate among companies. And the only thing that means is that people spend too much time trying to save something that's worth nothing. Okay? And so public money is typically a case of that. It's okay to stop. If you're 22 and your company's crap, stop it. If you're 25 and your company's crap, stop it. You'll have plenty of time to build another one. If you're 35, 45, 55, doesn't matter. But keep the time. The time is what's valuable. Like thinking that your personal brand as an entrepreneur is tainted because you're you're giving up on that company is completely false. People will respect you a lot more if you decide to kill it and start something more ambitious than they will if you try to drag a sort of zombie for years. I think in my case, the zombie lasted 2 years, and that was 2 years well, maybe not 2 years too long, that's a bit harsh on myself. But it was maybe at least 1 year too long, right? Out of the two, I should have learned those lessons. And hopefully today you'll be able to learn some of the things that two entrepreneurs, lots more successful than I was, were able to learn and how to use their first 100 days. And with that, hopefully Pierre and Emna hear me when I ask you guys to welcome them with a big round of applause.
Hello.
So Emna, Pierre, thanks a lot for coming. Thanks to you guys as well. You'll obviously get the opportunity to ask questions, but I get to start. It's my lucky privilege. So quite a few people in the room, actually the majority of the people in the room, didn't know what either of you was building, and that's great because it means you're going to be able to convert even more people. So if you don't mind giving me a 1-minute explanation on what Kazidomi is all about, that'd be great.
Yeah. Hi everyone, it's super cool to be here with you tonight. Very quickly, Kazidomi is an e-commerce selling healthy food, healthy cosmetics, supplements, etc., and that's at an affordable price. So we sell everything online and we ship the products directly to customers. The differentiation with other classic retail stores and e-commerce is our business model. We sell membership to customers, and those membership give customers access to discounts up to 20%, up to 50%, on all the products that we sell. So basically, we don't have huge margins because we give discounts to customers, and in exchange, we sell those membership, those loyalty cards to the customers. Yeah.
Thanks, Pierre. Can you give us a quick intro to Side?
Sure. We're Side. We're transforming the temp work experience, donc l'intérim. So temp work is especially used in warehouse, for example, or retail or offices, so which are the three verticals that we address today. And we are doing things in a very technological way, and so we're removing a lot of the hassle on the admin and the unreliability of the traditional agencies like Adecco, Randstad, Manpower, for example, and many others, which are very old companies and still very big. And we are transforming the industry by providing a product and technologies that make the service way more reliable, less costly, and way easier to manage for companies. So, for example, we're working with Etam or Primark to staff their shop for the end of the year. And so it adds really a big benefit to our clients who are looking to get very great profiles very easily with all the admin that we take care of for them.
So two very different companies, and that was part of the idea, is that whether you're building a consumer-facing company or an enterprise-facing company, there'd be tips for all of you. So before we get into the actual sort of first 100 days, and then we can also have a discussion about what the first day was. I think it's an interesting philosophical debate what the first day of a startup is. I was wondering if you could give us, maybe Pierre, you can start, what you had in mind when you decided to start Side, and sort of what it looked like in the very early stages.
Yes. So before we started, we were, so I'm Pierre, I'm the CEO, but I was with 3 co-founders since the beginning, so we are 4 in total. And we knew each other from school, and we spent the last year of college together, and we were freelancers. So we had lived as freelancers, we have lived temp work, we have worked alongside our studies, and we knew how great and how dangerous this could be, because the experience was not great. So it was an incredible experience, and it's the foundation of Side today, because it's the foundation of our work together as co-founders. First, we had an amazing team, and we found that out at the end of the year, once we had almost spent a year working together. So we knew that we had a strong team, very complementary, and that we wanted to continue working together when we graduated. And we worked as freelancers, so we made some money. So we had some capital, and so we had our diploma, we had a good team, we had some money, and we knew that we wanted to build something together, like be entrepreneurs. It was very inspiring for us. And so then, that's when many ideas emerge, and that's where the question of the first day is appearing, actually, because when is the first day? You decide you want to do something, you're inspired by many different ideas, you have different things in mind, and so one day we thought about the year that we had spent together, and we realized that actually there were a lot of students like us. A lot of people had free time and wanted to work alongside their studies, and actually they didn't, and we wondered why. 1, because it was hard to find a job. 2, because they didn't want to go to do an interview, send a resume, a cover letter. It was too many frictions. 3, because then they didn't know when they were going to get paid. They didn't know if that was protected. So there was not real service to help them do that. And so we tried. We had this idea, but then we did a very good thing, which is to try the idea very quickly and very easily, because we created like a landing page with this idea, which is like a real fake landing page. So all the jobs were fake jobs. The value proposition was real, and if you were interested, you just had to give us your email and register. And then we put this landing page online. And I remember very well, so we were just 4 in an apartment. roommates, so no one just knew us. And so that's the magic of the beginning of the internet, right? We create something very quickly, and then we put that online, and we wake up the day after, and we had around 1,000 signups. So it means that you're no one, no one knows you, no one knows your idea, you don't know if it's going to work, and actually you realize that 1,000 people in 24 hours are interested by this idea. And so then we were so amazed by this result that actually we digged into who were these people. So we started contacting them, emailing, calling to know more about them, and that's how it started. Then it's hard to get off the hook of learning more about the users and getting to understand what they're looking for, and try to imagine then what would be the product and what would be the experience that would correspond to what they have in mind.
It's funny that you started with the students, and we'll come back as the customers, and we'll come back to that later on. Emna, it's funny because you have a completely different story as to why Kazidomi started.
Yeah.
I think in the sort of like visionary founder who wanted to do this since she was a kid.
Yeah.
It's a lot more into it, so I'll let you tell the story of how it started.
Yeah, actually the company of Kazidomi was a kind of a child dream. I'm born in a family of doctors specialized in nutrition, and I have always been passionate about healthy food, healthy lifestyle, sport, etc. And when I was 12, I told my father one day I will launch a physical store where people could purchase the products without having to check every product stickers because there were some bad ingredients on them, etc. So I started my study in a business school when I was 18 with really the purpose to at some point launch a business. And during my years of study, I was getting super passionate about IT. I started taking coding classes, and I realized e-commerce was way easier to enter in. Financially, it was also easier for me to launch an e-commerce and not a physical store. So during my last year of study, I was like, okay, I need to write a thesis. Why should I spend my time on a useless paper, and not spend my time on a business plan and really create something? So very quickly, I created the first version of the website with not a lot of funding, only my first...
So by yourself?
Sorry?
You were by yourself?
By myself, exactly. And it didn't take me a lot of time, because actually an e-commerce is not super complicated to build. What I did, I realized that building an e-commerce is not only about IT, it's also about the products you put on the e-commerce, it's about the logistics, it's about the marketing. So very quickly I realized the IT part was taking me too much time. So what I did, I went to my coding teacher, asked him for a coffee, and I told him, hey, Mairi, would it be possible to help me a bit? I know you don't have projects right now, so why not spending time with me on Kazidomi, and maybe why not adding a line in your CV? And the guy told me, yes, I have time, I love the project, and I will help you. So I was super, super lucky, because I built the first version of the website for free, and it was a really basic one, not with a lot of feature, etc., but it was sufficient to get the first payment, the first act of intention from customers on the website. I started with 300 products, so I was a bit like, okay, if it's not working, I have 300 products for my family and my friends for the next few years. It's not a big loss. So I started with only 300 products, and I realized I had some traction, I had some visitors on the platform, but very quickly I realized also that the sales were not going up fast enough. So what I did, I took also my phone and I started calling the customers to understand a bit why users didn't buy on the website and why customers did not rebuy on the website. And I realized many people were not buying on Kazidomi because they thought that the platform was for people with diet problems, with health problems, etc. That was because of my communication that was wrong. And I was communicating a lot about Kazidomi on Kazidomi as the platform for people that have problems, that can find products that are healthy, etc. But it was too narrow, and I was losing a lot of customers that were just thinking, okay, I'm not going to purchase there because I don't have any problem. And then I realized I had a problem and I needed to pivot and change a bit the positioning.
And so what's day one of Kazidomi when you think back?
Actually, the day one, it was not funny at all, because you think that the first day you will launch the platform, you will have plenty of customers, you will have plenty of orders, but actually it was not the case at all. I spent the whole day in front of my computer just refreshing the back office and waiting for the first orders. And at the end of the day, I got the first order, and it was my father who was just like, okay, I don't want you to be sad, I'll place an order. And actually, it took me 22 days. So I started the 1st of September. The official launch was the 1st of September. And the 22nd of September, I woke up and I had 25 orders. And I was like, wow, Kazidomi is working. No, it is. I got it. I understood. I have something, etc. And then I checked the list of the customers. And they were all my friends. And actually, it was my birthday this day. And all my friends had placed orders just to satisfy me and help me a bit. And that was kind of it was for me really the moment I realized I had to do something, because sometimes the entrepreneur is just like into his idea and doesn't want to pivot, etc. But this day I really realized I didn't want to be the friends, a friend like this with other people just going on the platform to help me, etc. I wanted to get real customers, and for that I needed to change and the products and the website and the communication.
So one thing that sort of came up in both of your answers was trying different messages. And I think in the early days, so when you're looking for that product market fit, what you're actually looking for is a secret. And the secret isn't so much something that no one knows, but rather something that everybody knows, but that's hidden in plain sight. So people want to eat healthy products. I think in Europe it's been a truism for a long time. Students want to earn money and have a lot of free time. For anybody who's been a student, I think that's a pretty obvious thing as well. And so the question isn't so much, I know something that no one knows, but I'm actually going to act upon that secret. And so maybe, Pierre, you can start on this one. I was wondering if you could tell us what the early testing looked like. So you knew that was true, but you still didn't know exactly what the offering was going to look like from day one.
Yeah, exactly. So we have two sides, right? We have the people working called the siders, and we have the companies called the companies. And so we knew that, so we were spot on actually on the supply side, so on the worker side, sider side, that the experience, once made easier, would attract some people that were not usually working in traditional agencies, especially students, which we targeted in the beginning. So we knew that we had to iterate. The problem we had was on the other side. So what kind of companies should we go after? So who needs probably the students? And then what model should we use? So I remember that, and it's an important piece of advice, think about it before you start, because we started and we were super happy. We had these 1,000 guys, and we contacted them, we started building the platform. But then we had to find a model to make money, because that's the point of the company, right? So we had to find customers, but we didn't even know how to make money out of it. So we started as a job board, like a very strange job board to help companies, and Deliveroo, and Take It Easy, and Foodora, and probably Uber, but at the same time, many different companies. So it was a mess on the demand side. We didn't know exactly what we wanted to sell, and so it's important. It's part of the iterative process. It's this feeling of being a bit lost in what you want to sell and who you want to sell to. So we had on one side, it was the big boom of the on-demand companies, you know. So there was super high demand for the riders, les coursiers, for all the on-demand businesses. So we could provide with workforce, but the companies that needed this kind of workforce, they knew how to source, they knew how to screen, they knew how to handle all the admin, the payment, everything. So we had them on one side. And on the other side, we had more traditional companies that needed workforce. And then they asked us to take care of all the admin, the payment, the invoicing, etc., etc. So on one side, we want no payment, we just want the profiles. On the other side, we want the profile and the admin. So by meeting different customers, we actually understood that there was a typology of customers, and then that we had to make a decision on whether we wanted to go on a more like a job board model. Do we want to just provide the candidates and then you have to deal with it as a company, or more transactional model? So you are a company and then you want us to take care of everything, and payment also goes through us. And so it took us 2 months to understand exactly that, and then we decided to go for the transactional model. So it means that we had to stop working with 80% of our customers at that time.
So why did you do that? Because on paper it sounds like a stupid decision, right? You have 80% of your business that's with one type of customer, 20% with the other, and you're like, oh, you know what, I'm going to kill the 80 rather than 20. I think it makes sense, right? But on paper it sounds weird.
Yeah, it's true. But, well, if our dream is to change the way people work, right? Is to transform the experience of temp work. And so it's very hard to do that when you just send a profile to a company like Deliveroo and say, then do what Deliveroo tells you to do and bye-bye. You don't change anything. You just connect a person and a company, and then you don't change the rest. So we knew that our impact would be way bigger if we went through the transactional model. So a big part of building Side was about fun, and we knew that it was going to be very hard, but you need to have a lot of energy, so there is a dream, there is a force that guides us. And so, of course, when we had to make this decision, we thought that it was way more ambitious, and the journey seemed to be way cooler, even if it's actually very tough, on the transactional side, more than on the job board side. So that's why we decided to do this. So there's a mix between the potential that we saw and also the fact that to achieve the vision that we had to pick this model.
Yes, I think it's one of the very important things in these first 100 days is that it really does define the scope of your ambition. So in the same way that, Pierre, you were like, okay, you know what, too easy to go for the job board thing. I'll focus on the transactional, which is much harder but much bigger potential. Emna, you decided, you know what, I could maybe, because there are 2 lessons that you can learn from your thing. You could say, oh, I could just do a shop for the people with the allergies, or you can say, I'm going to build the biggest healthy supermarket the world has ever seen, and you decided to do that. I was wondering if you could walk us through some of the things that you decided to do to make that change.
Yeah, so as I said, very quickly I realized the market for people with problems with specific diet, allergies, etc. was super narrow, and even those people, they don't just want to go on a platform for people that have actually problems. They just want to go on a platform for normal people. So actually after a few months, I decided to change the communication, and the products that I was selling were products for everyone. I was selling pasta, tomato sauce, like really a lot of different products. The difference with the normal retail stores was that those products were healthy, without bad additives, without palm oil, refined sugar, etc. But I was just not communicating the right message and communicating to the right people. And at this time, I was like, okay, how should I reach my customer targets? And my customer target was way larger. It was about a lot of people just looking to have healthier diets, not healthy that had problems, but just wanted to live healthier. And you have a lot of people actually that want to have a healthy lifestyle. So I realized I had to change the acquisition channel, the marketing channel. I was at the very beginning selling a lot through doctors, dietitians, etc. So I was going to those people, trying to explain them the added value of buying on Kazidomi, and then the doctors were recommending the platform to their patients, etc. That was taking a lot of time, that was sometimes useless, etc. And that was quite costly, and the reach that you have with one doctor is only a few hundred people. But if you go to social media and you start working, for example, with influencers that have 100,000 followers, then the reach is way higher, the cost is also lower, and the potential market that you can reach is, of course, larger. So I realized I needed to change the acquisition channel, and I went from ambassadors like doctors, dietitians, sport coaches, to influencers, way easier to attract, way easier to convince. It was taking me less time. And actually what I did, because I had not a lot of money at the very beginning, I did not explain it, but it was funny because I knew I wanted to become an entrepreneur. So what I did, I put all my pocket money on a bank account, and I was saving money during my studies to at some point build my company. And I'm Belgian. I live in between Paris and Brussels, but I was born in Brussels. And in Brussels, to build a company, you need at least 6,000 euro to legally build it. So the goal was really during my study to put 6,000 euros on a bank account. And I did it. At the end of my study, I had 6,000 euro, which was enough to build a limited responsibility company. And yes, very quickly I had this money, which is not a lot. And marketing, it's quite costly. If you want to do advertising in the streets, if you want to do advertising on Google, on Facebook, etc., this is super expensive. So I started focus on influencers, and what I did, I developed an affiliate program where all those influencers, they're paid by commission based on the number of sales that they generate. And this was a super good acquisition channel because your marketing costs are fully controlled and you're not spending thousands of euros on campaigns on which you don't know what is going to be the potential return, etc. Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could tell us because obviously when you start a company, you have a couple hypotheses in mind, and I was wondering which one was the first that you realized was false?
There are a lot, actually. The first was about the market potential, and I already told you I was focused on the wrong market, and that was really my mistake, my first mistake. The second one was the pricing. Today you have plenty of e-commerce online. It's not super complicated to build an e-commerce. It's super competitive. Customers today they're not loyal. They are just looking for promos, and I'm also doing it. You want to buy something online, you will not go only on one website. You will check a bit how much does it cost on say discount, how much does it cost on Amazon, and then you'll go on the cheaper website. So I realized I had to do something on the pricing to be different, especially on my sector, healthy products. It's expensive. Not everyone can afford to buy those healthy products, especially young people that have like a lot of children, etc. It really costs way more if you go to an organic store than if you go to a normal supermarket. So I had to do something with the pricing. And decreasing the price was not possible just because the suppliers would not be happy about it. So what I did, I developed the membership system with it, which is a member card that costs 100 euros. So customers have to pay 100 euros before ordering product on the platform. And once they have bought this card, they have discounts up to 50% on all the products of the website. And the amazing thing about this system is that people are super loyal. Of course, if you have spent 100 euro to get access to discount on a website, you want to get it reimbursed at some point. So people come back on your website and you don't have to spend again and again on marketing to make sure they come back. You don't have to do promos every month to make them purchase again on your website just because they don't want to buy products elsewhere because they have the discount on Kazidomi, and they also want to buy more to save more.
So you started off thinking that you needed to pay for them to become loyal, but actually you realized that they needed to pay for them to become loyal.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty nice. Pierre, I was wondering if you remembered the first false hypothesis that you made at Side.
Yes. So we it's a nice way to say made a mistake. Like the first hypothesis that we found out was wrong. Of course, in the beginning we were super ambitious about the transactional model, and we had an offer that was, you can come to Side as a company and you can ask us any kind of profile, and we are going to provide you with the right profile on demand, which is a great value proposition for companies, but which is very, very hard to deliver. Actually, for example, if you need a photographer, so you could come on Side and ask for a photographer because you had portraits to do, and then we would find somebody like that for you in our pool of Siders. And then, if you had another need for translation, for example, we could find you this perfect profile. And then, if you had another need for content creation, if you wanted to write something about food, we could find somebody. And actually, we had this unlimited catalog of tasks that you could post, which was a great offer to actually have a lot of customers and a lot of usage, but which was very, very hard to deliver. So it took us some time to understand that actually it was not possible. Well, sometimes it was like a month, maybe or two, but to actually understand that it was not possible to deliver all that, and that we had to restructure our offering by a more targeted approach. So then that's when we started looking at who were the heavy users that we had and what industries they were part of. And that's where we realized that actually we were working with some warehouses, we were working with some retail stores, that we were working with some supermarkets, and that we were working with a lot of HQs like startups, SMBs for their admin tasks, customer support. And that's when we decided to restrict our offering to the job types that these companies are asking, and to then verticalize the way we would approach the market.
And so was it still the same Siders who were going to work in one category, so say in the warehouse and in the store and in customer support, or is the idea that you also segment the Siders in these different verticals?
Yeah, the good thing is that there is an overlap. So one of the reasons why Siders love Side is because there is a variety of jobs. So you can work in a very cool startup in Paris, and then you can work in a very cool store, and then you can work in a warehouse. Of course,
very cool warehouse.
There are some very cool warehouses near Paris. There are some very cool warehouses in the Paris area too, and that's also one of the things that is a bit different about the logistics vertical, because a lot of warehouses, as you know, are not on the Champs-Élysées, right? So they are further outside of the cities, and so sometimes students that are in the cities can go there. Sometimes we need to do very local acquisition, which means that it's not necessarily exactly the same kind of Siders for this industry, but still there is some overlap, and so there is some variety, and it's great for liquidity, and it's great like for the fact that we can find the Siders for the companies, and for the value proposition for them too.
So another thing that's sort of very important in the early stages, and I think something that founders tend to systematically underestimate, is how important the first hires are. And Imna, one of the many very cool things about Kazidomi is how low your turnover has been. So your employees have been extraordinarily loyal in the 2.5 years, 3 years since you started. And I was wondering if you could give us a bit of background on how you picked the first people who worked with you and how you keep on making them happy today.
Actually, the two first employees, they've left the company now, so we have a low attrition rate, but the first two, they left, and I'll tell you the story about why they left and why it is important to hire the right people at the very beginning. So very often what happens is that you don't have a lot of money at the early stages of a startup, and you go to cheap profile. Cheap profile is good because you don't pay a lot, but it's bad because you don't have really talented people. And actually it's a vicious circle, because talents, they attract talents. And at the very beginning, I was just looking for the cheapest profile, going to unemployed circle and trying to check how I could get as many subsidy as possible, because I really had only like a bit more than €1,000 on my bank account, and it was only possible to go for those kind of profile at the beginning. But at some point, it is costly to hire people without specific skills. And that's a bit my second point, is during the first days, the first months of a startup, you are looking for profiles that are a bit the Swiss knife, that are people that can do everything. But people that can do everything are not good at doing one thing. And actually, what you need very quickly in a startup is people that can learn new things, people that have specific skills, people that can do things that you cannot. And I was able to do a bit of everything, but I had no specific skills, for example, in digital marketing. But if you hire someone who's a bit like you, who can do a bit of everything, but doesn't have expertise in digital marketing, then you'll have a problem, because you'll do the digital marketing, but it's not going to be a huge success just because you don't really know how to do. You have to train yourself a bit on the ground. So hiring one person at the beginning, but hire it with good skills that you don't have is important. You also need to think about who you will hire in the long term. So what is important is when you hire the first profile, ask them, what do you want to become in the company? Would you like to be in a small company, or would you like to be in a startup that is growing and that is accelerating, that will keep innovating every day? Because it's super different. And the first profiles, they wanted the first thing. They wanted to be in a cool company, a small one, with a good atmosphere, with cozy office hours, etc. But they did not want to grow with the company. They don't want their skills to grow with the company. And that is very, very important, because at some point, if they don't want to grow with the company, you'll have some problems, and you'll realize that you'll have to hire other people that want to grow, that want to participate to this acceleration.
Thanks a lot. Pierre, you're a bit more at Side now. So you're a bit over 100, you're 25 almost. And so I was wondering, because when you started, you were like Emna, you were just out of school, and you're obviously selling to sort of pretty large customers. So if you're doing affiliate marketing, people don't really look at who's the founder on LinkedIn. If you're selling to Etam or I forgot the other customers that you mentioned, they definitely do. And so I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about first your first couple sales to these enterprise clients and how you conducted them, and then second, given that you've now hired sort of 100 people, if you could pinpoint a couple transformational hires that you made at Side, so like 2-3 people who really changed the company that aren't founders.
Yeah. So at first we were 4. And we stayed we were 4 close and quickly 6. And then we stayed for good 6 months, 6 people. And I think in the beginning, so we were lucky to be 4 co-founders. And then we had enough workforce in this team to actually get to seed stage, to raise money. I wouldn't advise to hire a lot of people quickly, except if you know exactly where you're going and what you're doing. Because a lot of stuff can be done by 6 people that are extremely motivated. So that's who we were, and I remember very well that this period was extremely creative and we were executing very fast. Then I would say that, as you said, the stage of the company and some details actually source and filter the people for you. I remember our first office, which was an apartment, Rue de Rivoli, 5th floor, an apartment, so a real apartment, which was a former DJ apartment with the floor covered of black and white carrelage, with little birds on the wall, papier peint, with my room, which was a totally black room with big flowers on the walls. I I can remember seeing some candidates walk in, you know, and you see
And the rooms had names.
Yeah, and the rooms had names, and these two. So we were roommates, and then we had to onboard some new people. So at some point we didn't have enough room, so we transformed our bedrooms into rooms. So we had mattresses that were on the walls, and that at night we would just put on the floor, sleep, wake up, and then this would become like the sales room, you know, in 5 minutes. So you'd better not forget your alarm clock. And so yeah, I remember these candidates walking in, and I can imagine the shock, you know. In the apartment, you can see 10 people with tables everywhere, and there's cooking and doing stuff like a group of hidden people, like clandestines, you know, and so it can excite some people. That's exactly what I'm looking for, and you can say, okay, so that's too early for me, guys. I can wait a bit and then join after. So this was, I think, a very critical time, because actually in the beginning, when you hire the first people in the company, these are the people that are pushing a lot for and representing then who you want to hire after. And some people that we hired early are still in the company today, and it's great. Yes, and then of course, so now we are more than 100. So as you can imagine, a lot of things have happened in between. A lot of more experienced people, because in 3 years we went from 0 to 100. So it's hard for people that you can hire in the beginning that maybe a bit junior, so not a lot of experience, to grow super fast and to be able then to run a 20 or 30 people department. It's very, very, very tough. If it's possible, it's great. If it's not, then you need to hire some external people to do this. And actually, to keep growing fast, it's usually what's necessary. So we had hired so multiple people with great experience in all the departments that we have, and that's how we build the team. But it's a lot of work, and of course a lot of mistakes. And so the first big accounts, well, at first we didn't target big accounts. So at first we were working with a lot of SMBs, very easy to close then, because the first companies that we worked with were actually people in the ecosystem. And so never forget this. If you are lucky enough to have a product that is for customers like a startup, for example, then sell to the startup. And of course, don't think that startups represent the rest of the market, because then you may be disappointed. Actually, the rest of the market may be a bit different than the startup world. However, it's a very great way to find the first customers and to build early traction and to get your first feedback on the product, and that's exactly what happened for us. So in the beginning, we were at the family, and we had a lot of companies in the family working with Siders, as Siders are great for young companies who are looking for external great talent to help them. And so that's how we started. And then we hired some sales that were more experienced in enterprise sales. And then as we got more and more experience also on the market, we managed to get in touch with these big clients and convince them to use us. And then once we have some track record with big clients, then it's easier to find other large clients. But it's true that in the beginning there's like this gap of selling to a bigger company and to some people that are 30 years older.
Yeah, so the long answer short is actually we didn't sell to enterprise, and that was what I was trying to get Pierre to say. Was don't waste time, try to learn quicker. I think I have two other questions before we open up to everyone, but before that I want to ask Emna a sort of analogous question, which is you had enterprise sales on one end, which was not necessarily what they knew how to do to start. And in your case, there's a big component of your business, which is logistics. And obviously, you never had to do logistics before you started Kazidomi. And so I was wondering, when day one you start working in the warehouse, what did you think? Like, how did you go about structuring the logistics of Kazidomi?
Very shortly, the story is I didn't think at all about the logistics part when I launched the concept of Kazidomi. And very quickly, it was super clear that I had to tackle this big thing that is logistics, and that represents half of an e-commerce business. So what I did at the beginning, I outsourced the full logistics stuff because it was taking a lot of time. I just preferred to give it to another company and letting me the time to work on the business things, on the marketing, etc. And after 1 year, the company with whom I was working at this time was not big enough to support the number of orders that we were making per day, just because it was a traditional company without a lot of IT processes, etc. And we had complex orders with 30 different products in them, with different sizes for products, etc. So it was just too complex for the kind of company with whom we were working, and we decided to internalize it. And that was a huge challenge, because logistics is not only about picking the products and shipping them, it's also about ordering all the products in the right quantity, avoiding out of stocks, making sure you don't have any delay. For example, customers, they need to receive their order quickly, so the logistics, if you have a peak, for example, Black Friday, you have a huge peak of orders during this day, you have to make sure you hire the right number of people to support this peak, because if you tell customers, yeah, it's Black Friday, you'll receive your orders in 2 weeks because we don't have enough people to manage all those orders, your customers, they just won't be happy. So e-commerce is a lot about peak, ups and downs, so you have to make sure you have a sufficient amount of people, and that's why sometimes you need to go to companies like Side to have people that are
perfect
flexible.
use case. You see, Black Friday, web.
Yeah. So it's a lot of things, and it's super cool at the same time, because the more you grow and the bigger you are, the more you have to be efficient in terms of logistics. And just to give you a few examples, when we started picking the order, we had just a paper with all the products of every customers, writing there with every product that reference were indicating where the products was in the warehouse. And if you have 10 orders per day, it's fine. People don't do a lot of mistakes. But when you start having 100 orders per day, then you start to have a lot of mistakes, because you have a lot of products, etc. And what you realize is having a paper and a pen to cross when the products were picked was not a good process. So we had to implement scanners, we had to give iPads with list of products, and we had to track the mistakes as well. And when you start tracking the mistakes, and when you can tell who does what mistakes in the warehouse and who damaged parcels, because we can also track who has packed the product, then you can give advices to your logistics team. And those kind of stuff, when you're small, you don't need to care about. But when you grow, damages, it can cost you a lot. And if you start tracking it, and at the end of the month you tell to one of the employees, those are the list of the products that were broken in the parcel that you ship, you need to change a bit the way you pack those products, it's super powerful. And you can see that the month after, the number of products that were broken for this person will decrease because of those advices. So logistics is very easy at the beginning, but it's key to have processes to track all the KPIs, etc. at some point. Otherwise, it can become a mess. It can become a mess because you can have damages, you can have exchange of parcels, and we had it, a customer receiving the order of someone else, and someone else receiving the order of someone else, etc. And those kind of stuff, when you are fighting to get customers and you realize that they don't receive the orders, or they have damages in their parcels, etc., it's just super bad. So having key processes and making sure you put the right people there, it's also important to hire the right people there, because it's a hard work. being in a warehouse for a full day, picking products and going the same way back and forward for a full day, it's not super motivating. And those people that are working there, it's a hard work, and it's a super different kind of management than the management you'll do in your office. And that was also a challenge for me, because in the office, the average age is around 28. People don't care about the office hour. They're there to reach the sky. They're part of the spirit of the company, etc. But when you go to the warehouse, they do the 9 to 5, not 1 minute more. They want to be paid 3 days in advance, not 1 day later. And it's a different kind of management, and you need to incentivize them with other ways than what you will do with people in your office.
So that gives me two perfect things to bounce off. So the first is, one of the great things in the way you did things at Kazidomi was you didn't anticipate the problems. So like at the beginning, what's hard in your business is getting demand, and so you said, okay, logistics is actually relatively low added value, so I'll just outsource it. And then you're like, okay, I'm not doing that many orders, so I'll just print out a sheet. I don't need to buy iPads and buy scanners. And then you're like, okay, they're fucking up too often, so I'm going to buy sheets and I'm going to buy scanners and do it. And I think it's just a general trend is good founders know how to deal with problems when those problems show up, because there are going to be so many problems that if you start anticipating now, you're just not going to do anything. And the second thing is, one of the other interesting things is this culture. So like you talk about this split between the office and the warehouse. And I'm wondering if both of you can point to sort of moments in the very early days that you think shaped the culture of your company and are still very present now. So maybe Pierre, you have a couple examples, and then we can go back to him now, of sort of foundational moments inside that even at 100 plus employees are still important and relevant.
Yes. So culture is something that is hard to identify in the very beginning, because it's like defining your identity. Who are you? You know, so I spent a lot of time with like this culture thing. Like I don't get it. Like, but they all talk about it. But actually, I understood when we were bigger in the team, more people in the team. So we embody the culture as founders and as early employees. We realized at some point when we were about 20 that we had to define what we believed into in terms of behaviors, in terms of culture, and who we were, what were our values. And because at some point when you have to hire 5 more people in your team, the rules are not super clear of what you expect from them. And so that's where the values are super powerful, because they explain black on white, and you can actually talk about these values directly in the interview process. And you can market these values so that people come to you if they believe in these values as well. So that you know that you have a team that is sharing the same identity. And so the decision that we made, for example, the decision that we talked about, the job board versus transactional, was a tough decision. It was a decision to kill 80%, 80% yes, of the business. And it was to actually fulfill our vision and to make sure that we were still very ambitious about what we wanted to do. So one of our values today is be champions, for example, be champions. So it's about the ambition that we have. It's about the fighting spirit that we want everybody in the company to have. The willingness to win, the willingness to improve, to win, to be able to make progress, you personal progress, us personal progress as a company, to reach the highest level as possible and to win in the end and to fulfill our mission. And that's something that is not for every company. Not every company wants to do that. Some companies are not deciding to actually go after something very ambitious and very tough. They would decide to go after the easier decision. We could become a job board. It's 80% of our customers. Let's continue doing this. But actually, we didn't decide to do this. Lately, we decided to change our legal model. Before, we were working with freelancers only, and now we are a regulated entreprise de travail temporaire. So now we can do interim like Adecco, for example. So it's a huge change.
It was a nightmare for a while.
Yeah, but that's why did we do this? Because if we really want to be champions in this market, if we really want to go deep in this market, then we need to have the right legal framework that makes it possible to sell to small but also large customers. And that's be champions. So another value is fight for yes, about the positive aspects of things, and what we expect from people is to say extremely optimistic and positive. And we've been through many difficult times, but we've always been able to overcome these difficult times because we've been optimistic, because we've been positive, because we've been transparent about a situation, but we've always tried to find a solution. And that's something that we expect from the people in the team too. You know, when you work in a very, like in your business, and in our business it's a human business, so everybody has failure. Of course, some people don't show up, but it doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes it happens. So you need to make sure that you have people in the team that are super positive about this kind of things, and that they stay optimistic about the future, and that's what we expect from people. And the last one is a value called Be Buddies. So it's about our history also as co-founders. As co-founders, we're 4 friends. I don't know if I would advise you to start a company with your friends, because it can be a big mess. We had worked together for a year, so we had tested this friendship/partnership, and actually we realized it worked, and actually it gave us so much energy. And so the pleasure to go to work and to, you know, keep going with your friends, but which I also highly respect for the professional skills, is something that kept us alive in the first 100 days. And that's what we expect from people who join Side today. It's to be able to be the people that we wanted to work with in the beginning, to be nice coworkers, to be team mates that are respectful, that are making the group a group that is healthy and that people want to work for. And we know that it's not only the role of some people in the company, it's the role of everybody to do that. And so these are our 3 values, and they come from who we are, and I think that the early days are the best source of inspiration for the values. If you really want to go to the source, you have to think about who you were and who you hired in the beginning, and what is the true identity, the true things that you firmly believe and that you thoroughly like, and transform that into the culture of the company.
Thanks a lot. And before we open to questions, Imna, same question. Are there moments in the sort of earliest days that you identify as being the turning points for Kazidomi's culture?
Yeah. I think we managed to build trust with our employees because we went over all their work, all their job, all their difficulties. I mean, by that, I went in the warehouse, I picked, I don't know, hundreds of orders. I packed thousands of orders, like really, really a lot. I did all those stuff myself. Same for customer support. I was alone at the beginning, so I was myself answering customers on the chat, answering emails. Same for everything related to marketing. I was doing the newsletters myself. I was writing the articles on the blog myself. And when you prove your employees you've done it, they will trust you. They will respect what you've done, because I was not an expert in everything. But I did all those stuff at my scale, and that really allowed me in the later stage to come to my employees and to tell them, okay, you know, I did the customer support stuff. I know how it is working. You cannot bullshit me anything, because I know how it is working. Same in logistics. I know how many orders someone is able to pick per day. I know how many orders someone is able to pack per day. All those stuff, because I did them myself. And that's really, really powerful for your employees. If you show them that all those tasks, you've done them before, they will respect you way more. And I'm not the CEO entering in the warehouse and just on my high heels, looking at them a bit like, oh, this is the warehouse. No, when I go in the warehouse, I try to help them. I open my eyes and I do as much as I can when I go there. And that's really help you to build trust with your company. And regarding the values that we have, of course, and that's a bit related to the value proposition that we have, being healthy is super important. And if you have healthy employees, those people, they will be more successful in their work, they will live better, and they're just going to live healthier. So being healthy is important, and that's something we have a look at. We're asking for during interviews, where are you purchasing your products? Are you healthy or not? Are you doing any sports or not? Because we really see the difference between profiles that are kind of persona and profiles that are not, and that are just not considering health as a priority. So that's important. The second thing is, it's a startup. It is hard from time to time. It's not always super cool. It's growing, it's super cool, let's continue. The atmosphere is good, we're just friends together, etc. But what is important is to have fun, because sometimes the sales are going down, sometimes they're going up, which is good, but sometimes it's going down. Sometimes you told your investors, those are the KPIs we will reach, and you don't reach them. So those moments are sometimes hard, and you have also moments you cannot control. Like imagine last month we had 3 days with problems on the payment on the platform. 3 days with a lot of transaction problem, with thousands of demand from customers on the customer support, etc., which was super painful. But it's important to stay fun and to let your employees know that we'll manage to find together a solution. We are a team, and it can stay fun even if it's a complicated moment. And most of the moments are funny and are good, but you also have those bad moments. And if you are really a team, if you help everyone, then the atmosphere in the company is better in general. And the last thing is grow. It's very important, and I told it, but to grow with the company, especially when you're a startup. Every month is going to be different, because sales are going to raise. You'll have different profiles joining the team. You'll change the way you do marketing. You start first with B2C, and then you go to B2B. So everything is changing constantly. And if your people cannot evolve with the company, it's going to pose problems, and those employees, they won't be happy. So it's very important to, very early, already when you do the interview, tell them you're not going to sit on your desk 9 to 5 and do the same things every day. It's going to change. In 1 month, your job description will probably be a bit different from what it is today. So those are the 3 values, and it's very important to communicate them in the team. And if your people know what they are, they will trust it, and they will behave while following those values.
Thanks a lot, Emna. And before we throw the flying mic to everyone, please join me in thanking Pierre and Emna.
Que la famille.